Hi, my name is Louise.
And hi, I'm Emma.
You're listening to Murder or Myth,
the true crime podcast where not everything is true.
The aim of the game is to find out whether the story is actually a murder or if it's just a myth.
Now, let's get started.
In this week's episode, I'm going to be telling Emma a story that revolves around a serial killer in Cleveland City, Ohio during the Great Depression.
Okay, interesting. What year was this?
The Great Depression was like 1929 to 1941.
Okay.
Don't quote me on that, but we're in that realm.
Yeah, got it.
Okay, so most of the victims of the serial killer came from an area east of Kingsbury Run, which was known as the Roaring Third. So it was a rundown area, home to bars, brothels, and gambling dens. So kind of already a crime-ridden area.
Okay, yeah.
In September of 1934, the remains of a woman in her mid-30s washed up on the shore of Lake Erie. This woman's corpse and one thigh were attached, but the rest of her body had been dismembered, and she was never identified.
Okay, so like partial body.
Yeah. So, yeah. A full year later, in September of 1935, two boys found a corpse of a young male decapitated at a dead end of a neighbourhood in Kingsbury End. And while police were searching the crime scene and nearby area, another decapitated body was found. One of the men was identified, but the other remained unrecognised.
Okay.
The following year, in 1936, two more male bodies were found in separate locations, both decapitated and both identified.
And were they...
Unidentified, sorry. Both unidentified.
And would you, like... Do you know, is the ones that were identified, were they, like, gangsters, mobsters, whatever, or was it just lay people?
No, there is no connection to, crime. In 1937, half of a woman's torso was found washed up on a shore near the area, and then a few days later the other half was found in the street in Kingsbury Run. In the same year, in 1937, a human skull was discovered, and dental work allowed this woman to be identified as Rose Wallace. So all leads were followed up on this woman, but to no end.
Okay.
So because the skulls were not found of many of the bodies, it was hard to identify them.
And they were connecting them together, though? They were kind of thinking it's all the same?
They were similar. So, by 1938, the remains of 6 more bodies, primarily torsos, were discovered in the nearby area, so around Kingsbury Run, 2 bodies being personally delivered to the investigation team. So, during the time of these murders, Elliot Ness was the Cleveland's public safety director, which is like looking over all kind of safety issues. So he looked over the police and like other emergency departments, like fire departments, stuff like that. So Ness was obviously the lead for this investigation, and remains of 2 of the murder's victims were placed in City Hall in front of Elliot Ness's office, and it was presumed that this was carried out by the murderer, taunting him
that he couldn't figure it out
for his inability to catch him or her. So there were 13 deaths confirmed to be victims of this murder due to kind of telltale signs. So most of the bodies, the torso was the only part of the body found, or the only part like kept intact.
Yeah.
And most were killed by decapitation. However, it's speculated this person could have committed over 20 murders in Cleveland.
Okay.
So in July of 1939, 52-year-old Frank Dolezal was arrested for the murder of one of the victims, Flo Palillo.
Right.
So he had lived with Flo for a period of time, and he was also associated with Rose Wallace, like an acquaintance.
Okay.
One
so
of
he
the
was known
identified
to her.
victims.
Yeah. Got it.
So he confessed to the murder of the woman he lived with. However, his confession was kind of like a rambling, but with very precise details that matched kind of almost too well.
Yeah.
And the police believed that he had learned these off and was coached to confess.
Oh, yes, okay.
So before he went to trial, he hung himself in his cell, but he was not believed to be the murderer of these victims, and the case remains unsolved to this day. So that's the end of my story.
So like it was passed off as if he was the murderers would have got him to confess. Right, okay.
Maybe had something on him.
Yeah, bit of blackmail.
Good old blackmail. Usually does the trick.
Okay, interesting story. When you started off, immediately I was like, Kingsbury Run? That sounds familiar. Don't know why.
Interesting.
So then I was like, and you were like, serial killer. I was like, I must have heard it somewhere. And then as you went on the story, like a lot of bodies, so there wasn't that much detail. It was more like just decapitations and stuff.
Yeah.
And then I'm like, okay, kind of could easily write like this person, blah, 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 connect them all up. But then it got a lot more detailed towards the end again, and I don't know, would you just like make up a myth that gruesome? But though I'm not sure. As per usual, I'm not sure is it a murder myth right now. But like based off my first initial gut feeling, I'm gonna say murder. Final answer.
It is a murder.
Okay.
I'm not sure how you're familiar with it. I thought it was, but I don't think it was on the podcast that you listened to.
I don't know. Kingsbury Run is the only thing that clicked for me. That's the area, is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, because I didn't... I mean, the serial killer wasn't named, like, I don't know. That's the only thing I would know of. But then as well, towards the end, where it was like the person was known and then the details and he got let go as well, it's just kind of like, oh, it seems like an old-timey serial killer case where they kind of like, you know, there's not much to go on. DNA isn't there all that much. You know, taunting the investigators as well.
Yeah.
Lots of murder details. But yeah, I guess
we'll end it here. Thanks for listening. Make sure to like and subscribe.
On this week's episode, I figured out Louise's story was in fact a murder.
Find us on all streaming platforms.
And join us next week for another thrilling adventure.
Remember, it's myth until proven murder.
Slay.